Good morning, everyone. How many of you work for a company which is over $500 million in revenue? How many of you think your company is going to be around for the next 20 years? Next 50 years? Okay, there's a lot of pessimists in this crowd. So we did a interesting research. We looked at the companies who have been around for the last 100 years, 50 years, and looked at what are the key things these companies have done to stay relevant and succeed and grow. I want to spend time, the next 20 minutes, talking about some of the key threats as an industry we are facing, and also look at some of the tools and tricks which large companies should use to see around the corner. It's going to be pretty interesting. One of the first things we did is we researched the companies over the last 100 years, and we went after industry after industry. And you can see that the automotive industry and the energy industry started created in the 1900s. And you can see each of this industry got created, it was during a certain period of time. Semiconductor industry got created between 1960s and 70s. Enterprise software got created in the 80s and 90s. And this got created because of some new resources, some technological innovation, some changes in regulatory policy, and so on. But the velocity of change today is unprecedented. We are seeing companies which got created in the last 100 years getting simultaneously disrupted because of a combination of the software capability, which is increasing across industries, the hardware value chain, a supply chain getting created in China, which is making it much easier for even a startup to build world-class products to disrupt companies which are in this area. So it's very interesting that companies set up over the last 100 years getting disrupted simultaneously. It has not happened before. And this is happening not just because of some of these startup unicorns, but also what the companies we call as tech mafias. We have Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and these companies are competing not just in the core industries, but across industries using software as a differentiation. And it's not just the large tech mafias or unicorns, but we call this concept a swarm of bees. You have all of these smaller startups which are competing against large companies in micro categories. So you can be a Wells Fargo, you're not really competing with another bank, but you're competing a whole bunch of new fintech startups which are eating away your market share from different parts of your business. And a lot of researchers show that in the next 5 to 10 years, about 30% of the Fortune 500 companies are not going to exist. So it's going to be a huge change happening because of the disruption happening from these startups. And let's take an example of one company. Take example of GE Healthcare. GE Healthcare is $15 billion in revenue. $15 billion. And the company operates in healthcare IT, therapeutics, diagnostics, a number of different healthcare areas. And every single part of the product value chain where GE Healthcare operates, there are lots of different startups coming and competing with them. And these startups are not just in the US. These startups are from all over the world. They are from Israel, they are from India, they are from China. And almost when I see my son playing with this small toy where he has a hammer, he hits one crocodile, then another crocodile pops up. Right now, when GE hits one startup, there are 100 different startups popping up. And GE as a company would know how to compete with Siemens, Philips, and other healthcare companies who are playing the same game like them. But how do you compete with thousands of such companies? Well, it's a very, very interesting change which is going to happen. So unlike being pessimistic like most of you here are, we wanted to be optimistic. So instead of looking at the companies which have failed, we want to look at companies which have succeeded. And we looked at the companies in the Fortune 500 list and looked at the companies which have been around for the last 60 years. We found 57 companies when in the Fortune 500 list in 1955, and they were in the list in 2015. And they were across industry. It could be industrial, aviation, automotive, chemicals, industrial, and so on. And interestingly, only 3 companies are from West Coast, and today's list has 66 companies from the West Coast of the US, a big change which is happening. And we studied some of these companies and figured out how are these organizations different? What made these organizations survive? And one of the oldest organizations here is DuPont. DuPont started 200 years ago. And they went through 2 world wars. They went through Great Depression. They went through a number of different recessions, but the company survived. So what makes these companies survive? We distilled that into 3 key areas and 3 types of companies and categorize them into those. So I want to kind of stop here and say, anybody have any idea on what makes these companies tick? Any thoughts? The ones who said your companies are going to be around for 50 years, how are you going to make your companies around 50 years? Talent, okay. Adoption, okay.
The willingness to change and adapt to the market.
Great, great. Okay, so we created 3 different categories. One category is they became conglomerates. A company like 3M started mining stones for grinding wheels. And today they are in 10 different categories with a number of different products for each single category. And they're able to hedge across industries. That's one key category of companies. The second category of companies are foreseeing future, and you can see PepsiCo. And Steve Jobs said, hey, PepsiCo is a sugary drink company. But when we went and analyzed the company, we found some interesting trends and traits. They were one of the first companies to get into dietary drink way back. They were the first companies to expand from drinks to foods. They were the first company to acquire companies in the healthy snack category. So they're able to foresee the future and adopt. IBM focusing a lot more on what's in the newer technologies and taking a bet on some of the newer areas and discontinuing some of the older business. The third set of companies are the companies which are very strong in tackling adversities. So they go through failure, and they're able to come back very strongly through failure. And if you look at a company like Procter & Gamble, and the company was there before Great Depression, and during the Great Depression, they increased their marketing spend. So every single time there's a tough time, Procter & Gamble increases their R&D spend as well as their marketing spend, so they're able to come out stronger than the competition. And then we looked at the attributes, the key attributes, which makes these companies different. And we found the 3 key attributes which makes these organizations different. One, these companies have the ability to embrace change. Second, they have a relentless culture of continuous innovation. And the third key point is the uncanny ability to see around the corner and look into the future. So those are 3 key areas which differentiated these companies, and that's part of the organizational DNA compared to all other companies which faded away in the Fortune 500 list. So we wanted to distill all of these insights and capture that in one single framework. We are consultants, so we like to see the world in frameworks. I know some of you think frameworks are boring, but I promise you this framework will help you look around the corner. And there are 4 aspects to the framework. The first part of the framework is the triggers. The triggers are, and we'll talk a little bit in detail in the next few slides, the triggers are business model, technology, how the business model and technology triggers are changing consumption, and fourth, in terms of change in markets. And the second part of the framework is how these 4 triggers change the organizational value chain or the industry value chain, and where the money is moving across the industry value chain, and see how you need to, as a company, go into. The other part of the framework is really looking at the ecosystem. One part of the ecosystem is the internal ecosystem, what is available to you within the company. The second part is the external ecosystem, what is available to you outside of your organization for you to tap into as building additional capabilities. Then looking at all of these from the eyes of the incumbents, the traditional competition you compete with, and then the disruptor, the startups whom you compete with. When you look at it holistically, you understand what are the key areas your business is getting disrupted and what you need to do to defend and win. And we have a slide on each of this. I'll take you through some aspects of that. First is business models. Bala talked a little bit about this. There are 6 key business models we have identified, which are creating fundamental disruption in the market. One is sharing economy. Sharing economy, we know, has disrupted the travel and hospitality industry, but it's also getting into other areas. Companies like Upwork are creating the next generation outsourcing companies who are using freelancers from across the world to provide outsourcing with a company like Accenture and IBM are able to provide. Then you have the second model where data is becoming a product. Tim Cook famously said, for Google, their consumers are the product. That's why they're giving all the products for free, or the consumer is a product. He kind of said it in an accusing way. But if you look at Google's market cap, they're almost catching up with Apple because they're able to monetize the data significantly. Nest is able to aggregate the data they're able to collect, and they're giving that information to the utility companies so that they can increase operational efficiency. And open source is a big disruption happening. Any IT infrastructure, enterprise infrastructure company today, it's all open source. And we heard this interesting insight from an open source company where they're saying that the person I sell into a company is not the CIO anymore. I'm selling into the developers, I'm selling into the users of the technology, and these users of the technology as a hobbyist are using open source software at home, and that influences the product they're buying in the market. So you are making it open source is not just a business model, it's also a marketing tool for companies to gain mindshare with the actual users, which are developers who are starting to buy the product, not necessarily the CIO. The second type of disruption which is happening is the technology. Again, technology is not about software. We talked about a lot of changes which are happening in software, but it's happening across the value chain. There is a lot of innovation happening in polymers, metal alloys, which is taking 3D printing from just pure rapid prototyping to actual end-user products in areas like medical technology, aerospace, and so on. You also see Internet of Things. It's moving from hype to reality. Way back in 2008-9 period, cloud was a hype. And we saw massive amount of investment from Amazon, Microsoft, and Google to build a cloud infrastructure. Today, globally, enterprises are adopting cloud technologies. We are starting to see very similar trend in IoT, where the technology companies are investing significantly in build capabilities. And the third aspect of technology is around artificial intelligence, machine learning. A lot of the newer technologies, which are really in the university lab. When we were in college, we used to study artificial intelligence. Now, we are starting to see mission applications, industrial applications of AI and machine learning coming in. From the autonomous cars with Tesla's building, to Apple Siri, to Amazon shopping site, all of them are driven in the back end through cognitive systems. And we're going to see a lot more of the product getting smarter as we go by in the next few years. And because of these changes in technology and business model, we are starting to see changes in consumption. You can see the numbers, be it the number of PCs sold, the estimated number of cars in the US, text messages. You can look at cable TV usage. All of these numbers are going down because of certain disruption. It could be car sharing, it could be the growth of WhatsApp. We are all glued to our kids are glued to the screen, but the screen is not TV anymore. It's screens of all different sizes. Right? It's a rapid change in how products and services are consumed because of these disruptions. And the fourth trigger is a change in markets. And the change in market happens in terms of how government adopts technology, large companies adopt technology, small businesses adopt technology, and consumers adopt technology. How many of you attended the Indian Prime Minister's visit in Silicon Valley here? Okay, a few of you had come in. It's a massive change in the last 18 months in India. It's very, the ones who have traveled to India, lived in India, you know how difficult to solve the physical infrastructure problem in India. It's almost impossible. But it is easier to solve the IT infrastructure problem. So the government has created something called India Stack. The India Stack allows identity to every individual, provides digital storage, provides the ability to transact person to person using your mobile phones, allows businesses to pay taxes online, and also a new consent layer which allows individuals to share their personal data to a specific vendor for a specific period of time. The complete stack is going to be on open source, And already the government has spent billions of dollars in building it. So global technology companies, it's a huge opportunity to sell into this. Second are larger companies. Look at China Mobile. China Mobile has 800 million users. So you're starting to see in emerging markets super-sized companies. Over $100 billion in revenue, $17 billion in profit, and China Mobile is getting into Pakistan, India, Myanmar, and a number of different countries. So if you're selling into a telecom company, a telecom service provider, a China Mobile should be in one of your top list of companies you want to sell into. And the change is happening in how small businesses adopt technology. And mobile has fundamentally changed how small businesses adopt technology. Gone are the days when companies have to buy Oracle software, SAP to drive their organizational workflows. We had a study recently done on how SMBs are adopting technology, and we visited a SMB, a small restaurant chain. And the owner, all she had was a mobile phone with WhatsApp on it. And she had multiple groups created in the WhatsApp groups. One group is for maintenance, and she finds some problem in the restaurant. She takes a picture, posts it on the group. The maintenance worker looks at it as a job order. He fixes that, sends a picture back. That's the workflow. You don't go into SAP system, raise a job order. It's completely different. And it's on WeChat and WhatsApp and WeChat are becoming not just messaging platforms, but transactional platforms, workflow platforms. And finally, it's about consumers. If you look at consumers, and the Gen Y across the globe is the same. And you can see that picture where kids in Africa are taking a selfie, using a selfie stick. But the next 2 billion users are also going to have different kinds of use cases. They're going to have use cases which we in the US and other developed locations doesn't need. Here's an example where a medical diagnostics is done using as a smartphone. So a lot of changes happening in the marketplace, and for any company to survive for the next 50, 100 years, it's very important to understand the changes happening in the marketplace, especially in the emerging markets, and see how you can make your products relevant for these products. So we talked about the business model, technology, consumption, and market triggers. Let's look at how it impacts the value chain of companies. There are two ways it impacts the value chain. I'll talk about the first one with media as an example. The digital transformation has impacted the media industry more than any other industry in the last 10 years, maybe retail or the other industry. And the physical world of media, you have companies in each part of the value chain. You have AMC Cinemas, dominant. You have Comcast, dominant distributor. You have WPP, dominant advertising company. And some of the companies like Walt Disney has tried to be part of all across, but their offerings and the value prop is not integrated across the value chain. But if you look at the digital value chain, Google is really a distributor. They started with Google Search, YouTube. They aggregate data, they provide that information, then they went into Android, the device side. And with that information, they're also creating original content for YouTube. And because they have information on what the users are using, they're able to use this data to provide personalized service to their advertisers, as well as to the consumers. So if you're in the physical world, how would you compete with the level of data and analysis Google has? And because of that, Google is able to move across the value chain and dominate not just one part of the value chain, but across the value chain. Huge difference. Netflix, looking at the distribution data, they're able to build new original programs without a pilot, a sitcom pilot, because they understand what customers are looking for, and they believe they can predict which sitcom is going to be a hit even before it's made. It's a very interesting change happening, and companies are moving across the value chain. The second part, how value chains are getting impacted, you can look at healthcare as an example. Here in this part of the examples, there are new companies, a new category is getting created in the value chain. In the healthcare scenario, you take patient to the care. That's the model that's been around for the last 100 years. Now you're taking care to the patient. It's about preventive care. So you have companies like Fitbit, which is collecting your fitness data and sending it to you. You also have companies like GoIQ, which is an interesting startup, which is based in India, where they're sending this fitness data back into the physical trainer. The physical trainer can guide you to do the right thing. Significant shift. The new parts of the value chains are created, not just the convergence of value chain, which we talked in the last segment. And this is not just happening at an industry level, it's also happening at an organization level. Look at an example of how enterprise software value chain internally is changing. We know DevOps. A lot of people still don't know what the definition of DevOps is. It continues to change. But if you take the traditional definition of DevOps, the whole, from concept to production, the whole chain is getting automated, and you don't need production engineers alone anymore, right? It gets integrated into the value chain, into the development organization. We are starting to see that with technical support and customer support and professional services, with cloud, robotic automation, and companies like Lithium helping with customer user groups. You don't need technical support teams. And then translate down into the sales and marketing organization. Because you're selling on the cloud and CIO is not buying, your individual users are buying, things are being sold online. So you don't need expensive suitcase carrying salespeople going and selling your product. So your sales organization is getting integrated, your marketing is looking at customer usage data, and they're able to personalize messages to the customer. So the data is being used with the marketing team as well. So our belief, things like product management, product manager, release engineer, those are legacy skills which are going to go away. They're going to be replaced by engineers with machine learning skills, engineers with very strong UI skills, and data scientists. So there's going to be a change in terms of the skill of people, what you need in your organization, not just in your engineering organization, but across your organization to drive and how the value chain is starting to change. And finally, its impact on the ecosystem. And the first part of the slide is how 95% of the organizations are structured. You have a headquarters. The headquarters have a whole bunch of R&D centers. Could be in China, it could be in India, it could be in Israel. It could be in the headquarters. Then the headquarters have a whole bunch of partners. It could be startups, could be universities. But the headquarters becomes the bottleneck, which kind of regulates whom they partner with, which startups to partner with. And there are few people in the headquarters who are defining things for the company. And things are changing so fast. The innovation happening all over the world. So what we see is it's moving into what we call as an innovation fabric, where your different parts of the ecosystem, be it startups, universities, your R&D centers, or nodes in the network, and the value or the innovation happen in the edges. So there could be a R&D center in China which is working on a certain product, finds a startup in Israel they want to partner with. They can go ahead and partner with that particular company, and there is no constraint from a geography perspective. It's a significant change in terms of how organizations are structured from a siloed, headquarter regulated level into a model which is a lot more networked. A significant change, and we're starting to see companies like EMC, NetApp, Honeywell, Bosch moving from Model 1 into Model 2 to enable them to innovate from all over the world and access ecosystem from all over the world. Going back to the framework, if you are able to look at all these dimensions, our belief is you'll be able to see around the corner and see what are the key disruptions your company should be worried about, and what capabilities which is available in the ecosystem for you to start leveraging and deliver innovation. We are already starting to see companies like Google becoming a conglomerate, becoming Alphabet, company like Amazon looking at what is going to be in the future, making big bets and investments. So even the companies which got created in the last 20 years are starting to use frameworks like this to look around the corner and see what is the right thing for the companies to do. Peter Thiel is investing quite heavily in research which is going to extend the life of human beings. I think that's a very hard problem. Extending the life of organizations, it's a lot easier if only you know the right tools and you and your organization are willing to change. And we're going to have some fascinating sessions later today to discuss a lot of these topics. Thank you.